Tony Robbins is the king of motivational speakers, an OG of general self-help, and sometimes an annoying marketer with endless power moves. Let's review him. Overall positive, thumbs up to Tony Robbins. I believe that he's a net value giver, and in my system of value, that's the ultimate compliment. I see judging people ultimately to come down to whether they add value or not. On a personal level, you judge whether they add value to you or not, and when you judge them overall, you judge whether they added value to the world and to humanity, or whether they took value from the world and humanity. And Tony Robbins, in my opinion, has added value. That's the ultimate level of analysis. So good for Tony Robbins. I'm glad he exists. I'm happy he's been on this earth. I am happy he keeps doing what he does. Now on the negative side, which is what we focus mostly on here, well, he over-promotes, including sometimes some annoying and even bad, and I would even say a few times nasty power moves. As an example, let's see our first garden variety power move. I remember once Tony Robbins saying, "Yeah, journalists often ask me, you've been with so many important and famous people, VIP, CEOs, head of states, what do they have in common? What do they struggle in common?" I don't remember exactly what was the question, but the frame was, so they asked me, you've been with all these cool people, and what have you learned? Frankly, I never thought it was even true. I thought that Tony Robbins wanted to show off that he's been with a lot of famous people, but he didn't want to say, I have been with many famous people. So, he put the frame that journalists ask me. Now, the second level is what I've seen him doing with Bill Clinton, for example. And I'm trying now to imitate what I've seen him doing. I think it was on Mike Tyson podcast, but it doesn't matter where it was. Bill Clinton called me and he said, "They're gonna impeach me tomorrow, what can I do?" And I was like, "You could have called me sooner." What was the game there? Well, first of all, he was showing off that Bill Clinton called him, a president that calls him for coaching. That's a big pull up for him. But two, he didn't say like Bill Clinton called me, he put it in a frame where he was making it a joke, so it doesn't come across like bragging. However, it's also a power move towards Bill Clinton. Think about it. First off, the way he replies is not very power protecting. It's a little bit aggressive. It's as if to say, "You dumbass, why didn't you call me sooner?" And that disempowers Bill Clinton, pulls Tony Robbins up, but it also pushes Bill Clinton down, and that's the part that's not cool. I will be willing to bet that Bill Clinton regrets the day he called this guy, and so did many others, because maybe they didn't want you to talk about it. Or if they were okay with you talking about it just once. I've heard Tony Robbins repeat this story tens of times. And now the last level, the nastier one, was when I saw him talk about Serena Williams calling him, and he just put it out in the open that Serena Williams called him when the sister died. And I thought that was so not cool. Number one, you are disclosing the name of your customer, the same you did for Bill Clinton, which is already not cool. With Serena Williams, it's much worse, because that felt more like a call that you will do to a therapist, not to a coach. Bill Clinton was more like a communication coach, social strategist, call it out, whatever, but it's more like a professional thing. Serena Williams, it's more like personal life and something very impactful at an emotional level. It's family life, it's a death in your family, man. For fuck's sake, don't go around and disclose that kind of thing. If it was a professional setting with an actual therapist, he couldn't even go out and talk like that. At least in most countries, you cannot do that, which seems like obvious and fair. And now, think about how that feels for the receiver. Think about Serena Williams now listen to Tony Robbins and she hears him share this story. One, she's brought back to the initial pain. Two, she feels betrayed by Tony Robbins, who now discloses it to everybody. Three, she now has to deal with the public that knows her personal life, her personal secret, that maybe she never meant it to be public. Or if she did, it's up to her. It's up to her when and how to share it. When I heard that, I personally lost a lot of respect for Tony Robbins. Personally, even negatively colored all his work that he's done because, man, you cannot talk about adding value to the world, being a force for good, and lifting people up, and then you do that shit. A person who wants to pull people up doesn't do that. He simply doesn't do that. It's just not cool. So after that, I saw more like a marketer who also happened to add a ton of value. However, I also want to make clear that if we're talking about nastier thing, that is the only thing that I have ever heard or seen Tony Robbins do that I will classify as really not cool, nasty level. Nothing else, and that goes in comparison and in contrast to the huge amount of value that he has given. Yes, he's a super marketer. However, he's the type of marketer with real good content. Overall, he's been such a huge value giver that even if you compute that, he's still so much more in the positive that I really cannot say anything bad about Tony Robbins, not even if I wanted. And I don't want because I think that he has been a force for good in the world. Yes. And speaking of which, I also want to tie back to general values. I think that it's a great goal in life to want to be a person, a man or a woman, who at the end of his life can say, my presence here has left the world better. It doesn't have to be anything huge. My presence here has left the world a little bit better. And I think it's a great value to move toward.